So welcome back to your third beginner's Java tutorial, and here's today's agenda. I'll first give you an overview of classes and objects so you could have a feel how classes communicate with one another. For instance, when you create class ABC, how do you establish a relationship between those classes? And to really make use of this concept, we'll be writing a first program involved creating multiple classes. From this, I'll show you how to get user inputs through the scanner class, which is a built-in Java class. So basically, you don't have to write your own class just to get the user input. All you got to do is call out this scanner class here, which I'll show you in a little bit. And like always, end it with the summary. Let's begin with the very first item on the agenda. In the previous tutorial, we created a Bugatti class, and inside a particular class we said that there contains fields and methods, and we also said we could create multiple classes such as having Honda Civic, Mercedes class, BMW, and so forth. Ultimately, there must contain a main method to tie everything together. This main method could go in either of these classes or could have its own separate class as shown here by Ferrari. Now, how do you get access to what's inside a particular class is through what we call objects. You create objects of that class. So for instance, in this Ferrari class, there's a main method here. How this main method gets access to this Mercedes is to create a Mercedes object in here. Similarly, if the BMW class wants fields and methods from the Mercedes class, all it has to do is create a Mercedes object somewhere in this class. Same thing with the Bugatti and Honda Civic. If the Bugatti class wants fields and methods from the Honda Civic class, the Bugatti class has to declare some objects right in this class. So I know it sounds a little complicated, but here's what it boils down to when you use an exercise to illustrate how the concepts are applied. It's very easy. So in this exercise, we're gonna have a math operation class which has two fields here, first number and the second number, and then we'll be having two different methods which adds these two numbers, and another method which will multiply these two integers. And we'll create a separate class which is called math tester. Inside this math tester contains my main method. I'll be using the main method to access what's inside this math operation class here. So in order for the main method to get access to what's inside this math operation class, it has to create a math operation object somewhere in here. So to create a math operation object, you start with the class name, which is the class you want access from. In this case, it's called math operation. And then following this class name, you have a reference variable name. I call mine math object. You could call yours whatever you like. And then you put equal sign, new, and then the class name again, which you want access from, parenthesis, and end it with a semicolon. Basically, this creates a new math operation object. This new object gets stored into the reference variable called math object. Now, we said variable must have a type. What is the variable type here? The variable type is of the math operation type. So once again, the class you want access from, the variable name to whatever name you like it to be, equal new, the class you want access from, with a parenthesis, and end it with a semicolon. Now you have this reference variable. You can access what's inside here with what we call the dot separator here. So if you want to access a method, you use this reference variable and you type dot and then the method name here as shown. For methods, you have to put a parenthesis, whereas fields, you just put their variable name as shown here. So all these codes go right in this class here. I just dragged it out in the middle so you could see it better. So enough me talking, let's start writing some code right now. Open up Eclipse, File, New Java Project. I'm gonna call mine multiple classes. And let me store this at a specified location and hit finish. This left tab, right click source, new class, and start it with a capital math operation, and hit finish. Before we create the math tester class, let's take care of what's inside the math operation class first. So we need two variables, which are integers, and two methods. So let's start that. Give it some enter. Okay, we start with the variable data type. Since we're dealing with whole numbers, these are integers, so type int, and we call our variable name first num, and we set it to 10. This process is called declaring and initializing your variable. The second num we call num. If you do this, end it with a semicolon, this process is called declaring your variable. But if you initialize it, it's gonna be called declaring and initializing your variable, in case you want to know what we're doing. Now to write the method, go ahead type public, which will be made accessible to other classes. Void, meaning has no return type, which is just used to print out whatever you want it to print out. Following this, put the method name, I call mine adder, parenthesis, curly braces, and let's write what's inside the curly braces. So since this has no return type, it will be just used to print out what we want it to print out. So go ahead, type sizzle and hold control space, and automatically it'll give you the printout statement here. So we want, let's see, first num plus second num. So basically this method will print out the summation of these two integers. Similarly, let's put the multiplier method. So public void mplier, and yikes, and type sizzle, hold control space, first num multiply by second num. Okay, so now you have your method all set up. Let's to format this whole thing, hold control shift F, and you see automatically it formats everything and puts it all pretty. Now that we're done with the math operation class, we'll be creating the math tester class, which has the main method. So go ahead, click on the source, right click it, and new class, and we call this math tester. Now to have the main method inside this math tester, you could type it, or there's a shortcut here. Click on this little checkbox. This is public static void main, and automatically it will generate this code here. So since we're here, let's talk about comment, briefly talk about them. So this is a line comment, and to comment out the whole paragraph, you will use this technique here. So, and this basically comment allows others to know what your program does or what your method is supposed to perform and so forth. So line comment 2/. If you want a paragraph comment, use this and end it with this here. So let me delete this and delete this. Alright, now as I've said before, to get access from the math operation class, all you gotta do is create a math operation object right in here. So let's begin doing that. So start with the class you want access from, which is math operation, and then the variable name I'm gonna call mine object equals new math operation and semicolon. Now that we created a new math operation object and we store that object to this reference variable, we could use this reference variable to access the fields and methods in the math operation class by the dot separator. So enough talking, let's do that. Dot, I want the method called the adder, so hit enter or click it with your mouse. The other one is called the multiplier, I believe. Let me check real quick. Okay, let me copy this so I don't type it, and semicolon. Now let's run this, hit this key, and okay, the answer is right below. Here's the adder, which gives us 25, and the multiplier, which gives us 150. In addition to accessing the methods from the math operation class, you could also access the variables from that class, as long as it's not declared as private, which I'll discuss in future tutorial. But for now, assume everything is accessible. So to access that variable, all you gotta do is use the reference variable we created, and the variable name from that class is called first num. And if you set this guy equals to 0 and run this, you'll see that the adder will return you 15 and the multiplier will return 0. Basically, this first num overwrites this first num here, so the 0 will get added with the 15, which returns 15, and for the multiplier method, the 0 will get multiplied with 15, which will give you 0. If you notice, these two variables were initialized to be 10 and 15. That's pretty cool and all, but it's not very practical. Let me show you a better way to get inputs from the user through the scanner class. So inside Java, we have this built-in class called the scanner class. Inside this scanner class, there's a bunch of methods. Some of them are shown here. Next int, which allows the user to enter an integer. Next double, which allows the user to enter decimal values and so forth. String, and this is the float. So to use this scanner class, all you gotta do is create a scanner object in this main method. How do you do that? Well, you type the scanner, which is the class name, followed by the reference variable, whatever you want it to be called, equal to new scanner, and inside the parenthesis you put system in with the capital S. This allows the user to enter the input. Now that you have the scanner reference variable, you could call the various methods that exist in the scanner class. For instance, if you want the user to enter an integer, you would call out this guy here, next int, as shown here, using the dot separator. If you want the user to enter a decimal value that stores up to 15 digit, you would use next double, as shown here. Now let's go back to Eclipse and use this method here, next int. Since we said that we're gonna allow the user to enter two values, we have to delete these fields here. So we don't want to initialize it to be anything yet, because we'll allow the user to enter those two values. Now go back to the math tester class. Inside the main method, we want to create a scanner object. To do that, type new scanner. Inside this, type system in semicolon. Now that you have a scanner object, you want a reference variable to hold this object. So I'm gonna call mine scan object. Okay, and you could call yours whatever reference name you want. So you could call yours X, call yours Y, or Z, whatever you like, but I'm gonna call mine this. And the reference variable is of the type scanner. Now you hover over it, it says scanner cannot be resolved. Basically, we gotta import this. To import it, click this, and automatically at the top it will generate this line for you, or you could type it if you like, but I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna click it. Okay, now that you have this reference variable from the scanner class, you could access various methods inside the scanner class. Man, looks like we don't have enough time to finish this tutorial, but here I'll just show you how to create two inputs for the user. In the next tutorial, we'll probably wrap up everything. So to do that, you want to use the scan object or reference variable you created, and then the dot separator. And then we want to use integer, so next int will allow the user to enter an integer, and we want to store this integer to an integer variable. So I'm gonna call mine first num, and then I'm gonna create the second guy called snum, which stands for second num, scan object, next int. Okay, in between here I'm gonna create some prompt that will prompt the user so he knows what's going on. Enter the first value, and then this, but actually I want to put them on the same line, so I'm gonna take this out, and then the user will enter what's here. And then after that, control that, please value. Same thing, I want to be on the same line when the user enters his input.